Picture this. The mightiest empire in human history collapses, and the world just keeps spinning like nothing happened. No apocalypse, no dramatic ending, just a Tuesday in September. September 4th in the year 476. A teenage boy wearing a purple robe sits nervously in his villa at Ravenna. His name is Romulus Augustulus, and today he's about to lose the title of Roman emperor. The man who's coming to fire him is Odoacer, and he's a barbarian general who's frankly tired of pretending anyone cares about this kid's authority. But here's the twist that should blow your mind. When Odoacer walks in and tells the last emperor of Rome to pack his bags, nobody screams, nobody panics. The empire that ruled the known world for over 1,000 years ends not with a bang, but with a pension plan. Odoacer doesn't execute Romulus. He doesn't parade him through the streets in chains. He sends him to a nice villa in Campania with a comfortable retirement fund, and basically says, hey kid, nothing personal, but this emperor thing isn't working out anymore. And then everybody just goes about their day. The merchants in the forum wake up the next morning and sell their olive oil. The bakers break bread. The aqueducts still flow with water. Roman law is still Roman law. The Senate still meets. If you were a regular person living in Italy that day, you probably had no idea anything had changed at all, because functionally nothing had changed for decades. Here's what nobody tells you about the fall of Rome. It didn't fall. It faded. Like a photograph left too long in the sun.
Think about every movie you've ever seen about Rome collapsing. Burning cities, right? Screaming citizens? Barbarians storming through the gates with torches? That's Hollywood. The reality is so much stranger and honestly more terrifying. The Roman Empire died because people stopped believing it mattered. And that's a much slower, quieter death than any invasion. By 476, Rome had been running on empty for so long that most people had forgotten what a full tank even looked like. The real Roman Empire, the one with functioning roads and professional armies, and emperors who actually controlled things, had been dying for 200 years. The emperors of the 5th century were puppets, kids whose names you had to check twice, rulers who came and went so fast you could miss 3 coups while on vacation. Romulus Augustulus himself had only been emperor for 10 months. His father, Orestes, a Roman general, had basically installed him on the throne like you'd install a screensaver. Nobody took him seriously. His nickname, Augustulus, literally means Little Augustus, which is Roman for, you're a joke, and we all know it. Even his enemies were mocking him. But let's rewind for a second, because here's where it gets really interesting. The Eastern Roman Empire is still thriving. Constantinople is wealthy, powerful, sophisticated. They've got the same Roman law, the same Roman culture, the same claim to being the true heirs of Caesar. When Odoacer deposes Romulus, he doesn't declare himself emperor. He sends the imperial regalia, the crown and the purple robes, to Constantinople and says, hey, we don't need a separate Western emperor anymore. You guys can be in charge. And the Eastern Emperor Zeno basically replies, cool, thanks for letting me know, and continues ruling what historians will later call the Byzantine Empire for another 1,000 years.
So here's the question that should be keeping you up at night. If the Roman Empire continues in the East for another millennium, if Roman law continues to govern Italy, if people still speak Latin and use Roman coins and live in Roman cities, did Rome actually fall? This is what makes 476 the most misunderstood date in history. We teach it as the fall of Rome because we need clean narratives. We need textbook dates. We need to tell students, memorize this, it'll be on the test. But history doesn't work like that. History is messy and gradual and full of people who don't realize they're living through supposedly pivotal moments. The average person in Italy in 476 wasn't thinking, oh no, the empire has fallen, what will we do? They were thinking, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow, and I need to pay my taxes, and did you hear about that new guy running things? Apparently he's Germanic or something, but honestly, who can keep track anymore? The barbarian kingdoms that carved up the Western Empire didn't see themselves as destroyers of Rome. They saw themselves as the new management. Odoacer governed using Roman law. He kept the Roman Senate. He minted coins on them with his face on them, but they looked exactly like Roman coins. The Ostrogoths, who conquered Italy after him, their king Theodoric was educated in Constantinople. He could quote Virgil. He built Roman-style buildings. He was basically Roman in everything but ethnicity. This is the part that breaks everyone's brain when they really think about it. The so-called barbarians who, quote-unquote, destroyed Rome wanted to be Roman. They didn't hate Roman civilization. They wanted in.
They'd spent centuries on the borders watching Rome with a mixture of envy and admiration. When they finally took over, they didn't burn it down. They moved in and tried to keep the furniture. The Visigoths in Spain, still using Roman law. The Franks in Gaul, building churches that look suspiciously Roman. The Vandals in North Africa, they conquered Carthage, but they kept the Roman bathhouses running. Because why would you destroy a perfectly good bathhouse? Here's what actually killed Rome: economics and exhaustion. By the 5th century, the Western Empire was broke. The tax base had collapsed. The professional army was gone, replaced by barbarian mercenaries who increasingly realized they didn't need to listen to a broke emperor who couldn't pay them. The bureaucracy that had held everything together for centuries was crumbling because nobody could afford to maintain it. Imagine trying to run the United States, but half the states stop paying federal taxes, and you can't afford to pay the military, and all your government employees quit to work for private companies, and foreign generals keep taking over different regions. How long would the federal government last? That's what happened to Rome, except in slow motion over 200 years. The day Romulus Augustulus was deposed was just the day someone finally said out loud what everyone had known for decades. The Western Roman Empire was already dead. It had been a zombie shambling forward on momentum and nostalgia. Nobody noticed because there was nothing left to notice. The transformation had already happened. Italy had already become a patchwork of barbarian kingdoms pretending to be Roman provinces. The Senate had already become a social club for rich people with no real power. The emperor had already become a ceremonial position for whoever could grab it this week.
What's truly haunting about this moment is how familiar it feels. How many institutions in our world are running on fumes right now? How many things do we assume will last forever simply because they've been around our whole lives? Rome didn't think it could fall either. Rome thought it was eternal. They literally called it the Eternal City. The people living in 476 didn't have the perspective to see what was ending. They thought they were just experiencing another rough patch, another political transition. They'd seen emperors come and go their whole lives. Why would this time be different? They had no idea that centuries later, we'd draw a line at that exact moment and say, here, this is where Antiquity ended and the Middle Ages began. But here's the final twist. Were we wrong to draw that line? Constantinople kept calling itself Rome for another 1,000 years. The Holy Roman Empire claimed to be Rome's successor for 1,000 years after that. The very word emperor comes from Caesar. Russia called its leaders Tsars. Germany had Kaisers. Both those words are just Caesar with an accent. Every European kingdom for the next millennium claimed to be the true heir of Rome. Every law code looked back to Roman law. Every church was built in Roman architectural style. Every educated person learned Latin. Every government tried to copy Roman administration. So when exactly did Rome fall? 476? 1453 when Constantinople fell? 1800 when Napoleon abolished the Holy Roman Empire? Or has Rome never fallen at all, but simply transformed into the very foundation of Western civilization?
The day nobody noticed the Roman Empire died might be the most important day nobody noticed, because it teaches us something crucial about how empires actually end. They don't end in a day. They end in 1,000 days of compromise and adaptation and slowed transformation, until one morning you wake up and realize the world you thought you lived in disappeared so gradually you never saw it go. That's scarier than any barbarian invasion. That's the ending nobody sees coming. And that's why September 4th, 476 matters. Not because Rome fell on that day, but because on that day, the world kept spinning anyway, and nobody even knew what they'd lost.